They look at you and see silence. They look at you and think you're fine. They think that just because you show up, because you breathe, because you carry yourself like you're not breaking, you're not burning. But they don't see the ashes behind your eyes. They don't see the nights you spent begging the darkness to just end it. They don't hear the conversations you have with yourself when the world sleeps. The ones where you ask yourself how much longer you can carry the weight without collapsing. And the truth, they never cared to know. They don't know your hell. You walk through this world with wounds so deep you forgot how healing even feels. You wake up to pain, sleep with it, eat with it, and still show up like a soldier who forgot he was allowed to fall. But you ain't weak, you're not broken. You're surviving a war no one else sees. And they call you cold, distant, strange, because you don't laugh like them, talk like them, cry like them. They think silence is weakness, but silence is a warrior's last weapon. Silence is the final shield when words become too heavy to carry. Silence is where you put the pain you don't want to spread. And that's where you've been living. In that silence, they never dare to enter. They'll say you changed. Of course you did. Pain changes everything. It reshapes your soul, sharpens your mind, and builds a fire in you that mercy can't tame. You lost people. You were betrayed. You gave love they threw away like nothing. You were loyal, honest, raw. And in return, you were lied to, left behind, and made to feel like your heart was a burden. They carved wounds into your back, then mocked you when you bled. And when you tried to explain, when you tried to show the hell inside you, they looked away. Because your truth was too ugly for their shallow comfort. But you kept walking. That's what warriors do, even when the armor cracks, even when the sword shakes in your hand, even when your knees scream for rest. You walked through storms barefoot. You fought with a soul already shattered. You smiled when your heart was flooding, and no one saw that. No one clapped. No one said thank you. They just took and left. Again and again. Do you know what that does to a soul? It turns you into something not even you recognize. You stop praying for peace and start preparing for war. You stop hoping they'll understand and start promising yourself you'll never be that soft again. And maybe that's what broke you most. You had to kill the softest parts of yourself just to survive. They didn't know your hell, and now they don't deserve your heaven. They made you feel like your feelings were too loud, like your love was too much, like your loyalty was foolish. And now you sit in this silence, grieving not just them, but the version of you that loved without fear, that gave without keeping score, that believed people meant what they said. But that version is gone now, buried under betrayals, drowned in neglect. And what's left is you, this cold, calm, hardened warrior staring into the mirror, wondering if all this pain was a punishment or a preparation. They don't know what it's like to scream without a sound, to sit in a room full of people and feel like a ghost, like your presence is tolerated, but your pain is invisible. They don't know how many nights you've clenched your fists under the covers, trying to suffocate your cries because the walls aren't soundproof and the world doesn't care for tears. They don't know the war that happens behind your calm face, the mental battlefield where every thought is a blade and every memory is a mine. They don't know that every step you take is heavy with grief, guilt, rage, and disappointment. And yet, you still walk. They don't understand how cruel it is to feel everything so deeply and be expected to say nothing, to bleed from the inside and be called dramatic if you dare to speak. That's your hell. To feel too much in a world that punishes emotion and glorifies numbness. You were never born for this darkness. You were made by it. You didn't choose to be the warrior. You were forced into it by a world that showed you no mercy. Every betrayal carved a lesson into your soul. Every abandonment taught you a truth. You're the only one who will ever carry your full weight. And it hurts, doesn't it? Hurts to know the same people you would have died for couldn't even show up when you were drowning. Hurts to know the ones you trusted most were the first to cut you. Hurts to realize love is a currency people spend recklessly, and loyalty is a language only few still speak. You've become fluent in silence, fluent in pain, fluent in pretending, and still you kept giving, kept fighting, kept standing. They don't know how many times you saved people while no one came to save you. You walk around with a heart so heavy it could crush cities, and yet they call you strong, like it's a compliment, like it's not a curse to carry this much alone. They admire your resilience without knowing it's a result of being forced to live without comfort. They praise your discipline, your calmness, your control. But none of them ask why you had to build all that in the first place. They don't know you became your own shelter because every other one collapsed on top of you. They don't know you trained your mind to survive because your heart was destroyed too many times. And now, when they look at you, they see discipline. But behind that, there's just a man who ran out of options. A man who couldn't afford to be weak. A man who was never given the luxury to fall apart. That's what they never see. That your power didn't come from peace. It came from pain, from fire, from solitude, from nights that should have killed you but didn't. You learned that being vulnerable meant giving them a weapon. You learned that caring too much meant being discarded. You learned that speaking your truth meant being misunderstood. And so you grew quiet. You didn't stop feeling. You just stopped sharing. You let the world believe you were fine. Let them believe you moved on. But inside you're a battlefield. There's a part of you still crying for help, still hoping someone would just ask the right question. But no one ever does. They don't want the truth. They want the version of you that entertains them, that serves their comfort, that fits into their small expectations. But you're done shrinking. You're done breaking for people who never learned how to hold you. You're done letting your hell be unseen just to protect their peace. You've been to the edge. You've stared into the abyss. And you came back, not healed, not whole, but awakened. You know what the cruelest part is? It's not just the pain, it's the silence after it. The way people vanish once they've taken what they needed. The way they walk away without looking back. Like your soul was a hotel room and not a home. Like your heart was a playground and not a battlefield. They left you with echoes. They left you with questions. They left you with memories that feel more like nightmares now. And no one came to clean the mess. No one came to check the damage. They just moved on. They smile now. They laugh. They sleep. While you sit there trying to stitch together pieces of a soul they shattered without a second thought. That's your hell, carrying scars from wars that no one remembers but you. And you can't even speak about it because when you do, they call you bitter, they call you cold, they call you negative. But the truth is, you're just real. And realness makes cowards uncomfortable. They always say time heals, but time doesn't heal anything when you're still surrounded by reminders. When your mind replays everything like a cursed film you can't turn off. When every place, every sound, every date triggers a ghost, You've mastered the art of pretending, smiling when it hurts, nodding when you want to scream, staying calm when your insides are falling apart. You sit at tables with people who would never survive a day in your mind. You respond politely to questions that cut deeper than knives. You've become so good at hiding that sometimes even you forget how much you're hurting until you're alone, until the lights go off, until the mask drops. And then it hits, all at once. The memories, the regrets, the what-ifs, the anger, the loneliness. Like waves in a storm, one after the other, no break, no mercy. And you just sit there, drowning quietly, because nobody taught you how to scream for help without being judged. But there's something they'll never take from you. Your resilience. They broke you, yes, but they didn't end you. You're still here, breathing, standing, fighting. Maybe not like before. Maybe now with more scars and skin. Maybe now with tired eyes and a colder heart. But you're still here. And that means something. That means they failed. Every person who tried to destroy you, every moment that tried to silence you, every betrayal that tried to end you, they failed. Because you refused to stay down. You didn't bounce back smiling, but you got back up bleeding. And that, right there, is strength. Real strength. The kind they'll never understand. Because while they run from pain, you faced it head on. While they escaped through distractions, you sat in the darkness and endured. While they faked happiness, you embraced the truth. And now you're not just surviving. You're becoming something unbreakable. They call it cold. You call it clarity. They call it distant. You call it peace. Because now you know what you're worth. You know what you won't tolerate. You know what your heart can't survive again. You've learned to choose silence over chaos, solitude over fake company, boundaries over people pleasing. You stopped trying to be understood and started becoming untouchable. They think you've changed. But this isn't change. It's revelation. This is who you've always been underneath all that pain, underneath the masks you wore to be loved, underneath the compromises you made to be accepted. Now they see the real you, and they're uncomfortable. Let them be. They were never meant to walk beside a warrior anyway. Let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Because when you rise from hell, you don't owe anyone an explanation. You just owe yourself the throne you bled for. They don't see the price you paid to become this version of yourself. They don't see the nights where your thoughts were your enemies, where the walls around you felt like they were closing in, and your own breath felt like a betrayal. They don't know how many times you looked at the ceiling with tears carving their way down your face, asking a God you weren't sure was listening. Why me? They don't understand that sometimes the pain wasn't just emotional. It was physical, a tightness in your chest, a heaviness in your limbs, a numbness in your heart that no amount of love could seem to reach. You walked with broken bones inside a body that smiled. You laughed with a mouth that wanted to scream. You gave advice you couldn't take. You helped others out of their hell, while yours only grew deeper. And now that you've stopped doing that, now that you've started putting yourself first, they call you selfish. Isn't that cruel? That the moment you stop sacrificing yourself, the world labels you the villain. But you're no villain. You're the aftermath. You're the product of abandonment, of betrayal, of endless nights where the only voice you heard was your own. And even that voice was cracking, shaking, begging for something, anything, to make it all stop. But it didn't. It kept going. Life kept going. Pain kept growing. And you kept moving. You built walls not because you hated people, but because you learned people don't handle hearts carefully. You created distance not because you were cold, but because you burned yourself too many times trying to get close to warmth. You shut down not because you don't feel, but because you feel too much. And the world doesn't know what to do with that kind of depth. They want smiles without stories, strength without scars, loyalty without limits. But you have limits now. You've drawn the lines in blood. You've marked your boundaries in the ashes of everything they destroyed. And still, you rise. Not because you want to, but because you have to. There's no applause, no cheering crowd, no soft hand waiting to pull you up. Just you, your heartbeat, your breath, your mind fighting to stay above the surface. And through that, you've become dangerous, not in violence, but in truth, in awareness, in solitude. You've become a soul that doesn't need validation, a spirit that doesn't chase illusions, a mind that sees through masks. You're not angry, you're awakened. You're not broken, you're reborn. They don't recognize you anymore because the version of you they knew was built for their comfort. This version, this one is built for war, built for peace, built for purpose, no longer here to entertain anyone's fantasy, no longer here to bend just to be accepted. You are fire now, not the kind that warms, but the kind that burns everything false to the ground. They ask why you're so distant now, why you don't speak like before, why you don't laugh as loud or stay as long. And you could tell them, you could unload every reason, every betrayal, every sleepless night, every moment you stood there waiting for someone who never showed up. You could tell them about the promises made and broken, about the way you gave all you had and got crumbs in return. But what's the point? They wouldn't understand. They never did. So instead, you stay quiet. You let them guess. Let them create stories. Because your truth, it's too heavy for people who've only known comfort. They couldn't carry it. And you're done handing your pain to hands that drop it. You're done bleeding for people who won't even offer a bandage. You've survived too much to keep explaining yourself. From now on, your silence is your sword, your distance is your armor, and your peace is your revenge. And you know what haunts you most? It's not the pain, not even the memories. It's that you never got a chance to fall apart when you needed it the most. You had to be strong too soon. You had to swallow pain before you even knew how to speak about it. Life didn't ask if you were ready. It threw you into the fire and left you to figure it out alone. And you did. God knows you did. But that doesn't make it right. Because deep down, there's a version of you still trapped in that fire, still screaming for help that never came. And no one ever came. No one knocked. No one asked. No one noticed that your smile was glued on, that your eyes were running marathons behind every fake laugh. They all just took your time, your energy, your love, and then left when you had nothing left to give. So now when they say you're too distant, you laugh. Because they never realized you were that way long before you walked away. They just weren't paying attention. You learned that trusting people is a gamble with broken bones as the currency. That being kind means becoming the target. That loving fully means bleeding eventually. So you hardened. You didn't want to. But the world gave you no choice. You had to become the protector of your own soul, the guardian of your own peace. And they hate that. They hate that the version of you who used to beg for love now demands respect. They hate that you no longer entertain half-hearted affection, that you no longer bend just to keep people close. You've become a mirror, and people hate mirrors. They hate facing what they've truth of who they were in your silence. Because your silence tells the whole story now. It says, you lost access. It says, I've outgrown your chaos. It says, I survived you. And they can't stand that. They want you to be broken by their absence. But they don't realize their absence is what made you whole. This isn't bitterness. This is awakening. This is what it looks like when a soul finally chooses itself. When a warrior stops bleeding for a world that never once offered him a single drop of mercy. You no longer look for understanding. You are the understanding. You no longer search for peace in others. You became the peace you were denied. You no longer hope to be loved back the way you love, because now you love yourself the way they never could. That's the part they don't teach you in fairy tales. That the villain isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's just the person who finally said enough. And you said it. You walked out of the fire, not with a crown, not with applause, but with truth. That hell you went through, it wasn't in vain. It built something divine in you. A strength that doesn't scream, a power that doesn't beg, a soul that doesn't shake. And yet, even with all this strength, you still cry sometimes. And that's okay. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. Crying doesn't erase your warrior soul. It proves you have one. It proves you still feel. And after everything you've endured, feeling is a victory. Because they tried to numb you. They tried to hollow you out. They tried to make you cold like them. But they failed. You still feel, you still care, just not for the wrong things anymore. You've learned that your tears are sacred. You've learned that crying alone in a dark room can be more healing than any fake support ever could. You've cried with fists clenched, with jaw locked, with memories flooding your chest. And still, you got up. You washed your face. You put on your armor. And you stepped back into the battlefield called life. That's what makes you a warrior. Not the battles you win, but the ones you survive without ever being seen. They always speak of strength like it's a loud thing, like it's a war cry, or a raised fist, or a victory march. But your strength, it was silent. It was invisible. It was waking up each morning when your soul begged you to stop. It was standing in the middle of a room full of people who didn't see you, didn't hear you, didn't care, and pretending like their absence didn't ache. Your strength was eating dinner with a broken heart, showing up to work with shaking hands, offering smiles when your chest was was on fire. It wasn't cinematic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, bloody, and no one clapped for you. No one saw you crawling when your legs gave out. No one noticed how hard it was to just keep going. But you did. You kept going. That's what makes you dangerous now. They thought they buried you, but they didn't realize you were a seed. And now you've grown into something too strong, too sharp, too wild for their comfort. And there are days you still feel it, the echo of their voices in your head, the sting of memories that refuse to fade. You walk into rooms and remember who hurt you in them. You pass by songs and flinch. You hear laughter, and it reminds you of the people who once swore they'd never leave. That's the thing about hell. It leaves its fingerprints on everything. Even peace can feel unfamiliar now. Even silence can be loud. But despite all that, you breathe. Despite all that, you move. Despite all that, you've learned how to build a life around the wreckage. And that's the part they'll never understand. They think healing looks like forgetting. But real healing is remembering and not bleeding anymore. It's facing what broke you without shattering again. It's standing on the ashes and realizing you're still here. Maybe not who you were, but someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who can't be manipulated by sweet words or temporary warmth. You no longer look for closure. You became the closure. You no longer wait for apologies. You outgrew the need for them. You no longer chase people. You realized your presence is a gift, not a question mark. That's your evolution. That's what happens when a warrior survives too much. He stops explaining his scars and starts honoring them. You don't hide them anymore. You wear them proudly, like medals forged in the fires of betrayal and loss. Because every scar is proof that something tried to break you and failed. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Let them lie. You don't need to clear your name in rooms you've outgrown. You don't need to correct the stories of people who couldn't even carry your truth. You've reached a point where peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the mastery of it. It's the ability to walk through fire without catching flame. To sit with your sorrow and still smile. To carry grief in one hand and purpose in the other. And maybe the world will never know your hell. Maybe they'll never understand the nights that shaped you, the battles that bruised you, the betrayals that bent you. But you know, you remember. You carry that history in your spine, in a way your eyes watch everything, in a way your voice cracks sometimes when it speaks about nothing at all. You are the archive of everything you've endured, a living testament to pain and survival. And if nothing else, know this, you didn't go through all of that just to fade quietly. No, warrior, you were meant to rise from it. You are meant to speak for the versions of yourself that never had a voice. You were meant to become the storm they never saw coming, because now you're the hell they'll never understand. They'll never know how long you stood in front of the mirror, staring at a face you no longer recognized. A face carved by sleepless nights and swallowed screams. A face shaped by disappointment after disappointment. They don't know how it feels to watch the people you once loved turn into strangers, to hear their silence louder than their words ever were. And maybe that's what crushed you the most. Not the betrayal, but the indifference. The way they walked away like you were easy to forget. Like the memories didn't matter. Like all your loyalty, all your softness, all your effort was disposable. They don't know how many times you wanted to scream, "I gave everything." But you never did. You swallowed that scream too, just like all the others. Because you knew the truth. They wouldn't understand. They never cared to. They were never there to know your hell. They just passed through it, leaving behind wreckage they'll never return to clean up. You started to build walls, not to keep people out, but to keep yourself safe from yourself. Because you knew that if you ever let that kindness out again, it would be devoured. If you ever let your heart open fully again, it would be shattered without warning. So you kept your words minimal. You kept your energy guarded. You stopped showing people the depths, because every time you did, they drowned in it and blamed you for their own weakness. You learned that not everyone deserves access. Not everyone deserves your fire, your wisdom, your protection. You used to think that being strong meant giving endlessly. Now you know it means protecting what's left. It means saying no. It means walking away. It means letting people think you're heartless just to keep your soul from bleeding again. And even when that hurts, even when it kills you inside, you know it's necessary, because your heart has limits, and it's not your job to keep proving you have one. And yet, some days you still ache, not because you want them back, not because you miss the pain, but because you miss the version of you that still believed. The version that loved without fear. The version that trusted words. The version that thought loyalty would be returned. That person, that softer, unguarded version of you, had to die for the warrior to live. And you grieve that. You carry the funeral of your old self in your chest every day. You carry the graves of every dream they killed, every hope you buried, every smile that faded before it could reach your eyes. You carry all of it with no one to share the weight. And that's the cruelest part of healing. It's lonely, it's quiet. There's no celebration. No one notices the days you didn't collapse. No one thanks you for choosing life when death felt easier. No one claps for survival when it's silent. But still, you survived. Still, you rise. And that is your revenge. Because now you're untouchable. Not because you're invincible, but because you've been touched by pain so many times, it no longer controls you. You've cried oceans. Now you can swim in storms. You've been betrayed by those closest to you. Now you trust your instincts more than their intentions. You've been misunderstood, misused, mislabeled. And now you've outgrown the need to be understood by anyone. They'll say you've changed. Of course you have. Pain is the most honest sculptor, and it carved you into something rare, something real, something they can't manipulate anymore. That scares them. It should. Because the one who once begged for love now walks away without warning. The one who once gave second chances now gives none. The one who once waited in the rain now builds his own shelter, alone. That's what pain does when you wear it long enough. It doesn't destroy you. It defines you. It teaches you. And then it frees you.